From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right, guys. Good morning, gang. Thursday, February 11th, 2021. The Practitioner Brief is live. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you're tuning in and this is your first time, thanks so much for tuning in. This show is a 10-minute show about the latest in cybersecurity news for practitioners, a real actionable kind of show. So you can comment. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so right now. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating that pushes us up in the rankings and helps more people get exposed to the show. And you can also share it. The share button right below, wherever you're watching or wherever you're listening, and just send it to a friend or two who could use to get this daily update every single day at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today's show is supported by our friends over at KnowBe4 and Wistic. You can find links to their awesome solutions and services in the show notes. So check them out as well and let them know we sent you. Here we go, guys. All right. Before we get started today, though, a real quick thing. My morning sip of coffee, if you're tuning in, I've got a double espresso Peet's coffee, the strongest number out there, 11. Yep, today's February 11th, so I figured the strongest capsule I can find, which happens to be number 11, and it's my second, so February 11th, second 11 double espresso. Have a sip with me. All right, so let's get into what's going on in the cybersecurity and information security world today for a lot of practitioners. Tuesday of this week was Patch Tuesday. I talked a lot about Patch Tuesday yesterday on the show. If you haven't seen it, go back, give it a listen, give it a watch. You'll definitely want to see what was going on. But SAP Commerce has a critical security bug which allows remote command execution, which is fairly significant, folks, because of the following. So the SAP Commerce, which essentially organizes data like product information, which is supposed to be disseminated across multiple channels. So if you're in an e-commerce business, warehousing business, SAP is very, very common in a lot of big box organizations. And even some of the mid-size organizations use SAP because their larger counterparts use it and it's easier integration. And so the vulnerability, which is CVE 2021-21477, affects SAP Commerce versions 1808, 1811, 1905, 2005, and 2011, and it ranks a 9.9 out of 10 on the CVSS scale, making it critical in severity. I always kind of dismiss the CVSS scale. On this one, I'm not. This is an extremely serious vulnerability. So the impact here is significant. So SAP Commerce has Drools rules, fun pun on words. The purpose of the Drools is to define and execute a set of rules that can be used by businesses to manage complex decision-making scenarios. The flaw specifically stems from a rule in Drools that contains a rule content attribute. This attribute provides scripting facilities. Jurisdiction over rule content is typically reserved for high privilege users, such as administrators. However, due to the misconfiguration of the default user permissions that are shipped with the SAP Commerce, several lower privileged users and user groups do gain permission to change the Drools rules content, and thus gain unintended access to these scripting facilities, which is significant because what that means is that an attacker with a lower level privilege access can inject malicious code into the Drools rules scripts, leading to RCEs and the compromise of the underlying host. And ultimately, this allows cyber criminals to impair the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the application. So a patch has been issued. You want to get this patch updated immediately, even if it means going offline for an hour or two. The risk here is significant to the business. When I read this, when we see it, when SAP releases it to the general public, understand the cyber criminals are out there. That's the risk. Here's the impact. If they actually find it, take advantage of it, get access, go through. They can severely impact your inventory, which has significant bottom line business impact to the business, which could lead to over ordering or under ordering a specific product. It could lead to a change in pricing and lowering of profit margins. This stuff isn't very easy to pick up on. So the mitigation effort here is, folks, patch, and patch. Get the patch online. It's critical. And get it done with the business. We'll move on to our next story today, also courtesy of Lindsay O'Donnell over at the Threat Post, where military and nuclear entities are under target by a novel Android malware. So this malware that's been around, called Hornbill and Sunbur, I've spoken about it earlier in previous episodes last year and the year before, even when I used to do the 60 seconds of cyber. This is significant because it allows for exfiltration of SMS messages, encrypted messaging app content, geolocation, other type of sensitive data, including screenshots, being able to launch the camera on the device in classified information. It's predominantly been targeting Pakistani, Indian, and Kashmiri folks, meaning it's most likely China. China has a strategic interest in making sure that India and Pakistan stay focused on each other and not on its regional ambitions. So Hornbill's been seen since early 2018. The newer samples of the malware have emerged in December of last year, and the first Sunbird sample dates back to 2017, was last seen being active in December of 19. Now, the comeback for this is significant. This is looking at a way where they are able to target specific people within specific organizations, very similar to the SolarWinds style of attack. So, and it's very sophisticated, not in the way of the attack, but how they pick their victims. And so keep an eye out for this. Google Play is a significant threat for organizations from a corporate espionage, from an IP perspective. There has to be more controls in place. I know that we can't just knock away 70% market share that Android has. So we got to set controls in place. One thing we do is we've set a bunch of controls through the Google Play Store on apps that can be downloaded, through which app developers, how the apps get into our environment, how the apps see data in our environment, how they interact with different things. So those are all critical. It's worth taking a little bit of time, getting your team together, huddling up, having this conversation, setting apart controls if you know how to do it. If not, hire someone that does, and get it done, because the Google Play malwares are only going to get worse now. We move on to TrickBot. Those who don't know, I'm a fan of TrickBots. We talk about them all the time. I think TrickBot is the most significant threat when it comes to cybersecurity threats to financial systems, because it's a pure money grabbing malware that goes after financial institutions and their customers. So TrickBot backdoor malware is now coded in NIM. Spoke about that about I think 3 weeks ago. And now to evade antivirus, the new TrickBot is now distributing their newer and stealthier BazarBackdoor malware through spam campaigns. Once a computer becomes infected, BazarBackdoor is used to provide the threat actors remote access to the computer to spread laterally through a network. Last week, several cybersecurity firms and advanced intel Vitaly Kremes analyzed a new sample of BazarBackdoor and discovered that the TrickBot gang ported it to the NIM programming language, which makes it harder for traditional antivirus and EDR to recognize the malware once it's in the system. That's why defense in depth is very, very critical here, because the risk is significant, especially if you're in a financial space, whether you're in fintech or financial services, banking, anything, lending, all of that. This is where they go. The backdoor component is actually capable of command execution and is written in NIM programming language to evade antivirus detection. The group is likely chose to pursue the lightweight malware development in NIM to frustrate antivirus detection mechanisms, focus on traditional binaries compiled in C and C++ style languages. Significant, folks. Not too long ago, Golang had become another preferred language of choice for some malware families, including the Robinhood ransomware, which went that way significantly as well. So keep your eye out for this. Build defense in depth around your EDR and antivirus solutions. That's really important here because that's the only way for you to start detecting it, and understand that if you're in financial services and fintech, you're a target, so start planning for it. Finally, our last story of the day. Congress said the U.S. response to SolarWinds was disorganized. The president has taken notice, and the White House on Wednesday announced a senior national security official has been put in charge to lead the effort. Ann Neuberger, the deputy national security advisor for cyber and emergency technology, was in charge of remediating the hack, identifying issues with the federal government's response, and launching a study aimed at preventing similar incidents, according to the White House. Intelligence and law enforcement officials are still investigating. Some see this as a Russian-style attack. I obviously agree there are some indications of Russia, but there's indications that China's also involved. And so we can't ignore that. I know people don't want to say China. I guess China is a bad thing to say. China is our most worthy adversary in cyberspace. They're the most active. They're the most blunt from the Russians, and they're more sophisticated than the Russians. No offense to my Russian peers. But with that being said, now the leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee did bless the Biden administration. This was a bipartisan kind of statement issued by Mark Warner, who's out of Virginia, and Marco Rubio. Mark Warner, by the way, folks, a huge cybersecurity advocate on the Hill, one of the great champions of cybersecurity. So definitely a guy who I'm glad to see isn't afraid to blast something when he sees it. He's got that kind of integrity, which is great. So a joint statement acknowledged that the White House was reassurance, and Neuberger's role is critical. And hopefully this will also reflect in our foreign policy and the way we negotiate going forward. That's it for our practitioner brief and the end of it for this week, folks. Yesterday, CISO Talk with Renata Friedlich. If you haven't caught it, you're going to love this episode. The feedback so far has been phenomenal. Thousands of downloads on this episode already. So if you haven't seen it, CISO Talk podcast, go check it out. Another podcast today, Kurt John of Siemens joins me on the CISO's Secret podcast. You can go and check that out as well on your favorite podcast listening platform. Tomorrow, Tech Corner, I'm going to be doing a very, very special Tech Corner. I won't be having a guest. I'm going to be talking slightly. I'm going to do a 15-minute podcast that you guys can tune into, listen to, and watch, where I'm going to really be talking a little bit about what's going on with SolarWinds and share a little bit of my experience with it. So you'll definitely want to tune into that. So that'll be live tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's it. We'll be back on Monday with another version of Practitioner Brief. This weekend is Valentine's Day. So stop, drop, buy your girl some flowers, some chocolates, take her out to a nice dinner, or cook something, or go do a picnic somewhere. Most importantly, do something for your loved ones, because they got to put up with us. We're like paranoid cyber folks. So help them out by doing that. All right, guys, that's it for me here today. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for watching and tuning in this week. Tech Town Square was also last night. You won't want to tune in. We talked about the Florida water control water plane issue with some great guests, Brian Penny and Brian Kane. You'll want to tune into that. That's also available on the CyberHub Podcast YouTube channel only. The Tech Town Square, go check it out there. That's it. Done with announcements, done with everything. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back with more on Monday. Until then, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.